Shana Tova, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning as we will virtually visiting shuls in Israel with Rabbi Joel Cohen. Rabbi Joel Cohen, a proud father of 7 and grandfather of 21, is a past principal of SAR Academy, a leading Jewish day school in the Riverdale section of the Bronx. Upon his aliyah to Yerushalayim in 2005, Joel has continued his involvement in education, both in Israel, teaching in a high school for students who have made aliyah from English-speaking countries, as well as online. In 2017, Joel established the nonprofit Israel, which is dedicated to providing quality sessions dealing with Zionism and Shoah to a wide range of audiences. Joel has presented to groups from Australia to Canada and points in between. Joel has deep Baltimore roots as his father and grandparents, and even one great-grandparent, are native Baltimorean. As always, feel free to write your questions in the chat during the presentation, and we will answer them at the end. Thank you, Joel. You can take it from here.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, excellent. Okay, excellent. Hi, everybody. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Yes, I have very, very deep Baltimore roots. As a matter of fact, till today, I'm still a diehard Baltimore Oriole fan. So it doesn't get any deeper than that. Thank you very, very much for joining me today, live from Yerushalayim. Shana Tova. And a beautiful day here in Yerushalayim is a little bit cooler. It's been very, very hot here. Just looking outside now, it's a little bit cooler now. No, obviously no rain here. Hopefully not till after Sukkot. We haven't seen a drop of rain till April. But in Mitzvah Hashem, please God, this coming winter should be just like last winter, and maybe it'll even wash away the coronavirus. Here's hoping. Shuls in Israel then and now. Just want to start off, first of all, here I am. I live in Katamon here in Yerushalayim. This is my house right over here, and this is my block, Rehov Bustanai. This is exactly the way it looks, except that the Google Maps people put in the word Bustanai. We don't have that on our streets, but this is typical. If you've been to Katamon or have friends or relatives in Katamon, this is a typical Katamon street, Rehov Bustanai. And for the last 15 years, we've called this very special place home. This time of year, usually, if it would be a non-corona year, people would flock to the Kotel for slichot. And people would go for what's called siyur slichot. People would then go ahead and take a little tour of shuls in Yerushalayim, visiting them as they were reciting the slichot at the late hours of the night and the wee hours of the morning. If you usually see a group of Harley-Davidson motorcycle riders, in the States, I guess you would think they're going to some sort of beer party or I don't know what. But here in Israel, where did the Harley-Davidson Motorcycle Club go? Sorry. Here we go. Harley-Davidson people are going to want to see your slichot. And really that tells the story of Israel, and that this time of year, everybody has the sense of spirituality. And even those who at first glance you would think are really very, very far away are really very, very close. Today, the Kotel is looking a little bit different. I'm sure you've seen it. Now we're in Kapsulot, and the Kotel has been divided up and cordoned off into different small areas so that the people can come. And I've been there a couple of times, and it's different, but yet it's still going to the Kotel, which of course is always very, very special. In America, when we talk about old shuls, we're talking about the Turel Synagogue. It's the oldest standing shul in Newport, Rhode Island, that was built in 1763 and is still in service today. The oldest congregation in America is Kahal Kodesh Mikveh Israel in Philadelphia, established in 1740, still functioning today, but the building, of course, is a newer building built in the 1970s. But when we talk about ancient synagogues in Israel, of course we have to start with the Beit Mikdash, because very, very often we think of the Beit Mikdash only as a place where there are korbanot, only in a place where there are sacrifices. But the Beit HaMikdash, the primary purpose of the Beit HaMikdash was very, very much to go ahead and to act as a place of tefillah. In Melachim Aleph in Kings 1, King Shlomo, when he's dedicating the Beit HaMikdash, says, V'shamata el tekinat avdecha v'amcha Yisrael asher yitpalalu el hamakom hazeh. And you shall listen to the pleas of your servants and your nation Israel to pray to this place. And so the primary purpose really was as a makom tefillah, as a place to pray to God. And of course, as a result of this, it is the practice of Jews since then, when we pray, always to face towards Jerusalem, as if the Beit HaMikdash is a place still for our tefillah. And so whether you're in Baltimore or in South Africa or in Moscow, you face north, south, east, whatever it is, towards the Beit HaMikdash, because that is the ultimate makom tefillah. That is the ultimate place of prayer. However, after the destruction of the first Beit Mikdash, after the destruction of the first temple, Jews, of course, are forced into the diaspora, and most famously, the prophet Yechezkel leads the Jews after the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash to the district of Bavel, where Jews then stayed for quite a number of years. And there Yechezkel goes ahead and comes up with the concept of a shul, of what we call a Mikdash Ma'at, a minor sanctuary. Said you're away, you're in the diaspora, you're far away from the Beit HaMikdash. There is no Beit HaMikdash. Ve'yi lahem l'mikdash ma'at, and it should be unto you a minor sanctuary. And that essentially is what the shul is. The shul shares with the temple, with the Beit HaMikdash, some of its most basic furnishings. Every shul has an aron, has an ark, just like in the Beit HaMikdash there was an ark. Every shul you'll have a ner tamid, the eternal light, which symbolizes the menorah, which was in the Beit HaMikdash. Every shul has a shulchan, has a table where the reading of the Torah takes place, and that, of course, is parallel to the shulchan, to the table, which was one of the furnishings of the Beit HaMikdash. So the shul very, very much is our Mikdash Ma'at, is our mini Beit Mikdash, no matter where it is in the world. Here in Israel, of course, biblical archaeology is something which takes place really every day. And every day you read about different groups that are discovering amazing things which really tell the story of our past. And certainly, archaeology has helped us uncover some of the old shuls that probably existed here in Israel. But of course, the challenge of archaeology is, how do you do biblical archaeology at the same time when you are trying to build a 21st century country? And this really came to light recently in some archaeological discoveries outside Beit Shemesh. Okay, we'll get the video here. Sorry. Here we go.
Welcome to today's virtual tour. A major archaeological discovery in Israel raised the question of how to preserve the past without stopping the progress towards the future. Take a look.
No one expected to find the biblical town of Bet Shemesh from the time of Isaiah and Hezekiah.
We thought that the Assyrians destroyed, and it took years for us to come back. and that everyone left and there was no one here. But that's not true. And we know it's not true because we have these finds.
Archaeologists thought a much earlier site on the other side of the road was all there was to Bet Shemesh. But before expanding a highway, they excavated and found a treasure.
What they understood from the finds is that after the city of Bet Shemesh was destroyed in the year 701 by Sennacherib, king of Assyria, a very, very famous historical and biblical event, a new settlement was founded, not on the top of the mound, but on the slope, on the eastern slope of the mound.
The road also connects to the Ela Valley, where David killed Goliath, and Bet Shemesh is associated with the return of the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem.
We can read the Bible, we can study history, we can learn archaeology, but when all of those three elements come together, then we have the proof of that history and that historicity of the biblical text.
Jar handles with royal seals, smashed figurines, and other artifacts from the site are on exhibition at the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem. But there's more to the story.
The progress that is required to build a new nation with housing and roads and infrastructure requires digging down and building new things.
Modern-day Bet Shemesh is about 20 miles outside Jerusalem. It has a population of about 110,000 and is growing fast.
It's complicated because I want to protect the road. I want to protect the site, and I need to find the way to protect both of them.
Archaeologists and developers knew they had to work together and fast.
The reality is that people need homes and roads need to be created, and there's this balance, there's this debate in.
So quite the balance. And this is really so much the story of Israel, the new and the old together. We have the old, the ancient, which is so important to us, tells the story of our people, but we have a booming country, over 9 million residents, according to the latest census right before Rosh Hashanah. And the two collide not so rarely. And this, of course, is the greatness of Israel and the challenge of trying to build a country as on the soil of antiquity. Our first little trip is going to be up north to the Golan area, to where archaeologists found the oldest shul that we know of. So you see here by the arrow, so it's right in the Golan. And so here's a little bit more of right in the Golan Dromi. In the southern part of the Golan is where this oldest shul was found. And it's called the Gamla. It's called the Gamla Nature Reserve. And there we have this particular archaeological site, which was uncovered a number of years ago. It's not a new discovery. And archaeologists date this back to the Hasmonean era. Now, this is really very, very important. It's approximately 110 before the Common Era is when this town, and the town was nestled in the mountains, probably settled by the Hasmonean kings that they wanted people to settle because it was in the outskirts. This is very, very far away from Jerusalem. And similarly to when Israel started to be resettled in the beginning of the 20th century, that we needed people who are going to go out to what's called today the periphery in order to settle the border areas. The same was true, the same very, very much was true then. So this shul existed in the Hasmonean era. The other thing which is important to note is that the Beit HaMikdash, the second temple, was alive and well during this time. And so you would not think that people had shuls. But they needed shuls. They were all the way up in the Golan. I assume for them to travel to Jerusalem was a major, major expedition. I assume that there were Jews there that never saw Jerusalem. And therefore, to find a shul at that particular time is something which is really very, very exciting. As you can see from the pictures here, there are telltale signs from the era. I'm not a professional archaeologist, just I live here, and so you get to know a little bit about archaeology. The telltale signs are these columns. The columns very, very much represent a building which obviously was a little bit more grandiose because it stood very, very high. Also, the wall, the way it was situated, was probably where the Aron was, probably where the Ark was, and it was facing Jerusalem. So on the basis of these clues, archaeologists concluded that this particular portion of Gamla was actually a Beit Knesset. And to the information that I have, this is the oldest remnant of a shul here in Eretz Yisrael. Again, dating back to the times of the second Beit HaMikdash, approximately 110 before the Common Era. The Jews, of course, are exiled from Jerusalem approximately in the year 70 of the Common Era. And the next shul, which we're going to visit, existed in that time when Jews were forced to leave Jerusalem by the Romans, and many spread to the northern provinces. The northern provinces, though they were Roman controlled, were a lot safer for Jewish life, at least through the 4th or 5th century. And then pretty much that's ceased to exist as well. And therefore, it's not surprising to be able to find a archaeological remnant of a shul. Right on the shores of the Kinneret is a place called Arbel. The Arbel is a very popular hiking site because it's up in a big mountain. But again, within the mountain, and that was considered to be a safe place. There was a community of Jews that lived in Arbel. We know about the existence of Arbel from a number of sources. It is mentioned in the prophets as a settlement. It was mentioned in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of Our Father. One of the rabbis is Nitai HaArbeli, Nitai who lived in Arbel. And so we know that there was a settlement in Arbel, and Arbel today is approximately maybe 10 kilometers outside of Tiberias. When you go and visit Arbel, and I did, and I actually took this picture, again, you just see stuff thrown around. And to the untrained eye, it doesn't look like very much, but again, these are remnants of columns. And whenever you see remnants of columns, you know very well that there must have been an important building, because that did not have columns in a regular home. But additionally, this is the telltale sign from Arbel, because there's a gate. There's a gate coming into the area, and certainly that gate gives us a telltale sign that this was a meeting place, an important building. And again, from the walls, it was decided by archaeologists that this was a shul. So this shul goes ahead, and this shul is dating back to approximately the year from 200 to 400 of the Common Era, which parallels the writing of the Mishnah. This is where the Mishnah was written, and this whole area is where the Tanaim, the composers of the Mishnah, lived. And so it is not surprising to be able to find archaeological remnants of a shul from that particular time period. We're now going to go pretty much to the same time period, and this is a place where I happened to visit over the summer, and this is a place called Tzipori. But it's called also Sepharis. And what's very important about this particular city, it is a major hub of Jewish learning during this particular era. As a matter of fact, the author, the grand composer, the editor of the Mishnah, and that's Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, lived in Tzipori, but he lived together with Romans. The Romans lived there also. We know from a lot of different sources that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi did have a very warm relationship with the Roman rulers, and that they lived more or less in peace. And Tzipori is a little bit, I'd say, around 20 kilometers further west than the Arbel, and it also sits upon a mountain. And it really commands the Emek Yisrael. It really commands the Jerusalem Valley in central north of Israel. And what Tzipori, the shul in Tzipori, is known for are for the mosaics. This is the most extensive discovery of mosaics that we have in Israel, which are all depicting different biblical scenes. And you can go, and we did go visit the shul in Tzipori, and you see these mosaics, and you see, first of all, how they decorated their shul. It really is something which we lost a little bit. You know, our shuls are, are places to sit and maybe have some stained glass windows, but not too much more than that. They took great care. I can't imagine how much time it took them to create these mosaics. You see this particular mosaic is of the different signs of the zodiac. And you can see at the bottom it says Tle, which is the sheep, the Ayal, the ram, etc., etc. And so this synagogue also is similar in that it dates from approximately 200 to 400 of the common era. I do see that people are putting in, I believe that there are questions, and I don't know if you want me to. Okay. I'm not going to, at the end, I'll go back to the questions. Okay.
Yes, don't worry about the questions.
Thank you.
It's more comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next shul which we are going to visit is probably the most visited ancient shul here in Israel, and that, of course, is by the Dead Sea, and that is Masada. Masada, of course, was built by Herod just around at the beginning of the common era as a fortress that he would use to escape. Because if you visited there, you basically understand that it's in the middle of nowhere. And of course, everybody is aware of the story of how people escaped from the Romans up to Masada and lived there for a while until eventually the Romans were successful in destroying Masada. Either they committed suicide or they were killed, etc., etc. But when you go to Masada, again, you see this unbelievable array of archaeological treasures, because though it is 2,000 years old, a lot of it was really very, very much left intact. And you could really tell how they lived on that particular time. And again, the shul of Masada is pretty obvious when you're up there, again, from the columns, from where it's situated, from the walls facing Jerusalem. And of course, I've had the honor of davening, of climbing up in the early morning. Do not go when it's sunny outside. It is very hot, unless you take the cable car. That's air conditioned. That's fine. And I've davened up there in the shul of Masada. Many boys and girls have the bat mitzvah ceremonies there. It's a very, very moving, and you just see the whole desert in front of you. And again, this is the shul from pretty much the beginning of the Common Era. So those are certainly the oldest shuls that we have here in Israel. We're now going to fast forward to approximately the year 1500. And that's a lot of fast forward because we know that really from the times of the end of the Mishnah or the beginning of the time of the Gemara, Jews had to leave the northern parts of Israel. It was just simply too dangerous, the persecutions, and basically there was very, very little life, very scant life, Jewish life here in Judea, in the Eretz Yisrael during that time. However, in the 1500s, things pick up again, courtesy of the Spanish Inquisition. Jews have to find a place to run to, and they are spreading from Spain all over the Middle East, to North Africa, to the Middle East. And there are a number of Jews that found themselves in the northern city of Safat, in the northern city of Safad. And again, here, just right by the Lebanese, not far from the Lebanese border. Why do they come to Tzfat? Why did they choose that particular area? Well, first of all, around the year 1500, the Ottomans gave permission. You just couldn't come and just say, hi, I'm moving. Let me call a real estate agent and let's see where I can get a house. The Ottomans did not give permission to Jews to live in other areas. And in the 1500s, they say, okay, you can come here. And so that's one reason why they came to Tzfat, but there's something else. We said before that the composers of the Mishnah, let's see if I can find the map over here, and I can't, I'm sorry. The composers of the Mishnah went ahead and they lived in this area. Secondly, the Sanhedrin, the ultimate Jewish Supreme Court. I know Supreme Court is a politically charged word today, but the ultimate Jewish Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin, also moved to different areas to the north. And therefore, the rabbis at that time in the 1500s said, you know what? we want to start over. We want to establish the Sanhedrin, so we're going to go to the last place where they were. So therefore, they settled on Tzfat. One of the most important rabbis to come to Tzfat was this man, Rav Yosef Cairo. Rav Yosef Cairo was a refugee from Spain. He's forced to leave in the Inquisition, goes to a number of places in Turkey, and then comes to the city of Tzfat. He is an extremely important rabbi because he is the ultimate decider of halacha of Jewish law. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch, which is the golden standard of Jewish law, and he wrote it while he was in this holy city of Tzfat. Now, you can go to his shul. His shul is still, it's a number of older shuls in Tzfat, and his shul is still called the Beit Knesset of Rav Yosef Cairo. It is not a very elegant building at all, but what you see is the following. If you look on the left, it was built during his time. So Tzfat is right on a fault line. And therefore, earthquakes have always been a problem in Tzfat, and therefore the shul was destroyed, rebuilt. Shul was destroyed, rebuilt in 1847, and is still in use today. From this picture, you see very much it is a simple synagogue. It's according to the Sephardic tradition, the way that things are positioned, the adornments on the bima very, very much show that this is very much in the Sephardic tradition. But Rav Yosef Cairo used it more as a study hall than a synagogue. And therefore, while you'll see the ark and everything else from the synagogue, it doesn't have, and even in the rebuilt way, does not have the grandeur of some of the older synagogues. Another leading rabbi who came right at the time of Rav Yosef Cairo, and actually they were muchutanim, they had children that married, was the Ari. The Ari, Ashkenazi Rav Yitzchak, who is known as a great Kabbalist. He has a very short life, but he comes to the city of Tzfat and very, very much gives it its identity as a center, till today, as a mystic center of Judaism. And here we come to the Shul of the Ari, which was built approximately 1572, but has the same earthquake problems. Let's take a little peek inside here for a second. The Shul of the Ari. So here you see the bima is very, very much raised, much more. You have to go up a whole series of steps to get to the bima. You see there's a dome that has various artwork on it, but certainly the crown jewel of that shul is the Aron Kodesh, is the Holy Ark, because you see here that it was hand painted, again, aesthetically very, very beautiful. And you get certainly the motifs of a Middle Eastern style, as you would expect from the artists of that time who were living in Tzfat. We are now going to go to the next kufa, the next time period, and that is the time of the modern Aliyah. The modern Aliyah, which starts in the 1800s, where you have these new olim that are coming and establishing farming communities throughout Eretz Yisrael. And one of the most famous is located right below Haifa, about 10 kilometers outside of Haifa, and that is Zichron Yaakov. And here we have it right on the road. Up to Haifa is the city of Zichron Yaakov. I'm sure many of you have been there. Of course, it's the home of the Carmel wine factory. And of course, the philanthropist who basically built these communities was Baron Edmund de Rothschild, the famous Rothschild banking family. He was the one that had the foresight to go ahead and to purchase lands and to encourage people to come and pioneer these lands and to work these lands. Now, these lands that were bought basically where the Arab communities were not. They did not live in the coast. The coast was a bad place to live. It was hard to plant. The rich farmland was up in Samaria and the Shomron, and that's where you find the line of Arab villages and cities. The coastal plains was difficult. It was hot. It was humid. It was full of mosquitoes. But Edmund de Rothschild started the Yishuv of Zichron Yaakov.
The settlers looked to Europe for help, and they found it in the French baron, Edmund de Rothschild.
They discovered that they can't grow anything there because it was sand dunes. Now, you can't grow apple trees and you can't grow wheat in sand. And if you planted something, even if you took a little root, you know, the first sandstorm would kill the new plants. So eventually, Rothschild said, they're not going to succeed like that.
Baron Rothschild helped the settlers start a thriving citrus grove, where Jews and Arabs worked side by side. Then he gave them grapevines from his vineyard in France, the renowned Chateau Lafite. He also sent his own experts to supervise the growth of the new Carmel winery.
Grapevines do very, very well in sand. And so they started growing grapevines and they started making wine. And the amazing thing was that the wine was Rothschild wine from Rothschild vines. And it became very, very good wine. You see, so all of a sudden, they had their first success.
So Baron Rothschild did not only create wineries and vineyards and everything else, he also built shuls. Baron Rothschild was an observant Jew, and he established in Zichron Yaakov, Ohel Yaakov. That is named after his father, and that was established in 1886. And it's still very, very much in use today. I had the pleasure of davening there a couple of years ago. I was up in Zichron and went in there, and you go into shul there, and it's really remarkable to be davening in that shul from the early pioneers of the most of the modern era. Similarly, he started a yeshuv called Maskeret Batya, which is a little bit south of Rehovot, and it's called Maskeret Batya because his mother's name, Rabbi Baron de Rothschild's mother's name, was Batya. And so this was a maskeret, this was in memory of his mother, Maskeret Batya. And this is the shul that he built in Maskeret Batya. So these are shuls from the 1800s that built by Baron de Rothschild. Perhaps the most famous, interesting shul story that we have here in Eretz Yisrael is that of the Churva. The Churva, which is very much an odd name to give to a shul, because the Churva means a destroyed place, has a rich history. Some of it shrouded in mystery when it was actually purchased and by whom, but it was in the old city of Jerusalem. A plot was purchased by the Ashkenazim. They built the shul approximately in 1700. They did not have money to pay for the shul, and therefore the Ottoman Turks tore down that shul. They came back in the 1860s and they rebuilt the shul in the very same location. And that shul that you see right over here, you see the dome top of it. This shul was the center of Jewish life in the old city until 1948. This is where Herbert Samuel, who was the first governor, the British governor, who was Jewish, came to visit. This is where the first chief rabbis were appointed. All the major events all took place in the Churva synagogue. In 1948, after the Jordanian Legion captured the old city, again they take the Churva synagogue and they just destroy it. Here you see a picture of some Jordanian soldiers standing outside. The whole thing is destroyed. The stones are used for latrines, and it just was horrible, horrible, literally a khurban, literally a destruction. 1967, we come back and we are reunite the old city of Jerusalem. And from 1967, this is what was left of the Churva synagogue. Just that arch. If you go back to the picture over here, so you see that it's an arch dome, and one arch is what survived the Jordanians' destruction of the building. And so I still remember, I'm sure many of you remember coming into the old city, and that's what you saw. And you heard the story of the Churva synagogue. And then in 2010, come back and we rebuild the Churva synagogue. And today. Beautiful arches and very exquisite artwork in each of the four corners of the synagogue and murals. It is absolutely a gorgeous place, and in so many ways symbols the rebirth of the Jewish people in their land. That this destroyed synagogue now is so beautiful and so wonderful. The biggest synagogue that we have today in Israel is the Bell Synagogue. The Belz Hasidim built this magnificent structure in the year 2000. When you come into Jerusalem, you can see it from the road, and it dominates certain parts of Jerusalem. And inside, on a regular year, you have some 8,000 Hasidim that are davening there on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I don't know how many they had this year. Again, I was not inside it, and I can't tell you. This is a picture from before, just to give you a sense of the bells.
מעבר לפאר ולהדר, יש כאן בעיני כל חסיד ערך סמלי של הצלחה וניצחון. חסידות בעלז איבדה רבים מבניה בשואה, קומץ חסידים שהגיעו ארצה הקימו מעפר את האימפריה, שמונה היום עשרות אלפים בארץ ובעולם. בהיכל המרכזי הזה 2,000 מקומות ישיבה. גובהו של ארון הקודש 12 מטרים.
Just in interest of time, the Aron Kodesh is 12 meters high. There are 2,000 seats, permanent seats, but for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, they fill up the place normally, and they have upwards of 8,000 people davening there. It is quite the structure. The last shuls I wanted to show you are those which are really very special. In every single army base, there is a shul. And again, that tells the story of modern day Israel. We're modern, we have an army, we have to protect ourselves, we are ancient, we have our religion, we have our traditions, and therefore every place, every single army base that you are at, there is a shul. I did take this picture myself. Our son was an officer in the army. He's now just in Miluim. Now he does reserve duty. And this is at the officer training base, which is called Bad Echad, which is in the southern part of Israel. This is the synagogue. This is the synagogue that's there. Here is a beautiful synagogue located. It's called the Shififon Synagogue, located on a paratrooper base in Israel. And this synagogue is, if you take a look at it, this is on an Air Force base. If you look at the motif of the synagogue, it's supposed to look like an airplane. A little bit. You do see the wings coming up on the side, and it's supposed to look into the airplane. And so just the very fact that every single army base has a shul tells the story it's all itself. Slichot. This is the time of Slichot, and each section or each population within our country has another way of going ahead and davening their Slichot. The Teimanim, the Yemenites, certainly are unique. I have a Yemenite son-in-law, full disclosure. He is great. We love him very much. But you see, as opposed to Ashkenazim, where we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, and then at the end of Yom Kippur, and that's it. At Slichot, the shofar is out and in use. So this would never happen in an Ashkenaz shul, just everybody taking out the shofar and blowing, but that's what happens. Another totally different ilka slichot takes place in Migdal Oz and Gush Etzion, where there is a Beit Midrash seminary for women, and there they have slichot. They do have 10 men there, but maybe 1,000 women saying slichot in the middle of the night. So you name it, we have it in Israel, different groups, but of course there's still nothing like the slichot that's said by the Kotel, by the thousands of people together. So I'd just like to end the program by wishing everybody a Gemar Chatzima Tova. Everyone should have a good, gesund year. It should be a year of success, of health, of good news for Jews all over the world, peace in Eretz Yisrael, and hey, maybe even Mashiach. Wouldn't that be great? I thank you very, very much, and certainly have a bit of time for questions and comments, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was great. We really appreciate you being here, especially on Israel time. So thank you so much for that. We do have some questions for you. I'm just going to go through the chat here in a second as I scroll through them and try to find them. We have some great comments. Let me just look for the questions. Okay. Here's one. It says it's from Ken. Can you discuss the differences between the synagogues in the diaspora as centrality of Jewish life as opposed to the shuls in Israel?
Okay, it's two totally different animals. The shuls here in Israel are very functional, and they are here just to pray in. All other sorts of activities, no matter how much they try, and they do try, because the Israeli community, they realize that things are different in the diaspora. It's so not cultural to do things in shul, with the shul. So you'll have a Shabbaton, maybe here and there. But you know where I really found it? I have to tell you one thing, which took me so long to get used to. A Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when I lived in New York, you bought a seat, and that was your seat. You didn't move from that seat. First day, second day, Yom Kippur, you were in the same seat. You had your name on it, and that was it. Here, in my shul, there's a guy that comes. He comes the first day of Rosh Hashanah. He's there for Shachris, and then he's off to do someplace else Musaf. And then the second day, the guy that was in that shul the first day comes to your shul the second day. And there's like different people just roaming around, even the chazanim. He'll have a chazan, will daven Shachris one place and goes to another shul for daven's Musaf in the other shul. And it just really showed me that there's no sense of real shul loyalty. The people view here shul as a place. Okay, I'm going to daven. It's close to my house, and and this is where I am. But for social activities, they look for other areas. You see that very much in the youth. There's no shul youth department. What good shul in the North America doesn't have a strong youth department? Here, it's virtually unheard of. Youth departments, Bnei Akiva. You have the Tenuat Noah, you have the various Bnei Akiva, Ezra, or whatever it happens to be, and that serves as the vehicle for all youth activities on Shabbos, and then one day during the week. So it's a totally different sort of experience. Here where I live, there is a shul or two which do stress kihila, the idea of the congregation. They do have shul rabbis, which is not a given at all in most shuls, but still it is a shadow of what goes on in the United States, simply because there are other avenues where people get together, whether it's work, whether it's the shkuna, the neighborhood, or whatever. The shul just serves a very different purpose. Somebody asked what finances synagogues. We do. You do get something. Sometimes you get something from the municipality, something from the Ministry of Religion. Maybe they'll give you some chumashim or something like that. But we pay membership dues, just like you do, except a lot less. I think I just paid membership. My shul I usually daven at, the membership was 450 shekel. So that's around $125. And that the expense of shul was double that, $250. I assure that at your synagogues you're paying a bit more. Okay, so it's good that there are also synagogues representing Masorti, liberal Jerusalem. There are all sorts of synagogues here. You name it, it's like I showed you, from the Teimanim to Migdal Oz. There are all sorts of different synagogues with all sorts of different bends to them, where everybody can be happy. What you do find here in synagogues, at least the ones that I pray in, everybody's welcome. People are not judgmental. People walk in shorts, people walk in t-shirts, people walk in this way, that way. Take a seat. Here, everybody, no, you're good. Just no one is judgmental. No one is judgmental at all. At least the synagogues that I pray in. There might be others. I do understand that there are others. How is COVID impacting the kotel this week? A lot. Again, it's a shadow of what it usually is. Just a shadow of what it usually is. And that's it is what it is. You can go, but they're very careful about how many people are in the area at a time. You can only go to a very specific area and just stay there, socially distanced, with masks, etc., etc. Okay, any other questions or anything I can help anybody with?
I think that's...
Just a little bit about the excavations at the ancient Jewish village. Okay, I don't know particularly at that particular site. I know that there is that the place where this Dr. Meyer is? Again, there are various digs taking place all over the country. I don't know anything particular about that dig, so I don't want to comment. Are you familiar with the Churva Gedola, when it's performed by whom? I know that the Teimanim have it. I've never davened with the Teimanim on Rosh Hashanah. I will ask my son-in-law. He's my go-to when it comes to anything Temani. I've learned so much about them. When my daughter first said, "Oh, she was bringing home a Yemenite boy," so I got, I was a little bit okay. How's this going to be? They are great. I come from German roots. I'm a Yeki. The Teimanim are the Yekis of the Sfaradim. They are on time. They are punctual. They are exacting. And we have a wonderful relationship. Okay. I hope everybody, okay. I will, Nisan. I will try to get back and find out. Okay, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Gemar Chatima Tova. Hope everybody had a stimulating, interesting 45 minutes together, and you have those ga'aguim, you have that those feelings of love towards Eretz Yisrael, and hopefully very soon everybody will be able to come here to visit, to live, to do what you want here, and we should all be safe. Okay, Gemar Chatima Tova. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who was here today. Shana Tova, Happy New Year, Gmar Chatima Tova. We do not